I am compelled to remind everyone that the Yankees dynasty of the 90s was not built on flashy free agent signings. We think of the Yankees as big free agent spenders from time immemorial. That's been their reputation since George Steinbrenner first bounded Leroy Jenkins style into the free agency era of the 1970s, signing Catfish Hunter and Reggie Jackson and Dave Winfield. But those days had cooled in the collusion era of the 1980s. And in 1990, Steinbrenner was suspended from baseball for paying $40,000 to a guy named Howard Spira, who said he could find dirt on his own player, Winfield. Steinbrenner was just trying to get out of paying $300,000 that he'd committed to Winfield's charity. That's how petty and cheap the guy was.
There are far-reaching decisions in l'affaire George Steinbrenner. It is 1-0 Yankees. We're in the top of the fourth. I don't know how to exactly report this while doing a ball game, but I'm going to try. Dave LaPointe deals to Alan Trammell and is fouled away. Travis Fryman popped up the first pitch. Today, Baseball Commissioner Fay Vincent announced that Yankee owner George Steinbrenner had agreed to resign on or before August 29th as managing general partner of the club for his dealings with gambler Howard Spira. A new managing general partner will be appointed on or before that date. Pitch is lined by Trammell down the right field line, one hop off the wall, and it is touched by a fan. It will be a grounds rule double for Alan Trammell. George Steinbrenner will remain as a limited partner with the Yankees, but he will give up as the managing general partner, and that means that there will be someone new to run the Yankees.
Wow.
What grew out, you're hearing fans applaud the decision as they have heard it, I guess, on radios or maybe tiny TVs. Press conference is still going on. Cecil Fielder is the hitter, and the pitch is cut on and missed.
While he was suspended in the early 90s, the Yankees built the foundations of their dynasty the old-fashioned way. Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, Bernie Williams, Jorge Posada, Andy Pettitte, all these guys were drafted and developed by the organization. Paul O'Neill, Tino Martinez, and David Cohn were acquired by trade. It's true that they had been able to keep this core together by giving some guys big contracts, most notably Bernie Williams, and they did have a high payroll. But in the 1990s, the Yankees were not real big players in the free agent market. They just paid their own guys a lot. The really big free agent signings of the 90s had nothing to do with the Yankees. Greg Maddux to the Braves, Barry Bonds to the Giants, Roger Clemens to the Blue Jays, Mo Vaughn to the Angels, Kevin Brown to the Dodgers. It was all the other teams that were making big splashes. It was only after the 2000 season, when the free agent wave of the 90s had started to recede, that the Yankees started to go after big-name guys on the open market. They added guys like Mike Messina and Jason Giambi, and then went international, signing Hideki Matsui out of Japan and Jose Contreras out of Cuba. That last one was the one that led Red Sox team president Larry Lucchino to christen them the Evil Empire.
So the thing I always think about with Jose Contreras is that, like, allegedly he had verbally committed to the Red Sox beforehand, and, like, when he did sign with the Yankees, there's that story of Theo Epstein, like, destroying his hotel room or whatever.
I mean, I forgot about that story, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, Jose Contreras was pretty disastrous. I mean, not, he's one pitcher and he was just, like, a little below average, but, like, he was pretty resoundingly bad for the Yankees, and, like, it's weird.
I'm really surprised you didn't use your favorite adjective, mid, there. I feel like mid is the perfect description of Jose Contreras' time with the Yankees.
Yeah, and it was weird how that seemed to be such a flashpoint for a guy who, like, eventually turned into, like, a decent reliever or whatever.
Yeah, he did not turn out to be the, like, Cuban ace that I think people thought he was when he first defected. But it was really the fact that the Yankees were bucking the trend, that they were going after free agents while other teams were turning away from free agency and spending less. For example, listeners might remember from Chapter 2, Kevin Brown, the pitcher who got baseball's first $100 million deal from the Dodgers back in 1999. Well, by 2004, LA was looking to dump the last 2 years of that contract and shed the salary. Who did they find to take it? The New York Yankees. And that made them an outlier, which spawned resentment and a million comments about buying championships. But the Yankees hadn't won a championship in 3 years. None of their big free agent acquisitions had a ring yet, which is why they felt the need to go out and add A-Rod in the first place.
And it wasn't just A-Rod. That offseason, the Yankees had gone on a spending spree. And by 2004, they had a huge contract at virtually every position, with apologies to second baseman Miguel Cairo. The pitching rotation didn't just have a $100 million guy in Kevin Brown, but also an $88 million guy in Mike Messina. The bullpen had the highest paid closer in baseball in Mariano Rivera, who was making over $10 million that year. In the outfield, they had Hideki Matsui in left, who had the largest contract ever for a Japanese player at $7 million per season. In center, they had Bernie Williams, still on the massive $87.5 million extension he'd signed before 1999. In right field, the Yankees went out and signed Gary Sheffield to a 3-year, $39 million deal. In the infield, they had Jason Giambi and his $120 million contract at first, Derek Jeter and his $189 million contract at short, and now, of course, Alex Rodriguez and his $252 million contract at third. Third, the Yankees had added the best player in baseball, and they weren't even playing him at his natural position. It was like buying a Picasso and then hanging it in your closet. Which brings us to the whole Jeter A-Rod thing. As you surely remember from our last episode, the two former friends had had a falling out after Alex said some insulting things about Derek during the press tour following his big Texas contract. So there was some concern about the two being paired up as teammates now. But Brian Cashman hoped to avert that by making clear from the beginning that there would be no shortstop controversy. He called Jeter before the trade was announced to make clear that they were getting Alex to play third. And both Rodriguez and Jeter were, at least allegedly, fine with it. Jeter told Cashman the addition was pretty cool. At the introductory press conference, which in the Captain documentary, Jeter notes that they made him fly up to New York for, A-Rod called the situation a non-issue. Jeter told the press, the worst thing that could happen for the media, I think, is for me and Alex to get along. I think everyone wants us to disagree, to battle over who's doing this and who's doing that. But that's not the case. But to anyone outside the organization, it seems strange. A-Rod was clearly the better defensive shortstop. He'd won the Gold Glove the previous 2 seasons. And while it seems like maybe A-Rod would eventually need to move positions, I mean, we're not that removed from Cal Ripken kind of breaking the mold for what a shortstop could be. And if A-Rod was going to continue to put up crazy power numbers and add weight into his career, maybe he needed to play third or maybe needed to move positions. But at the time, it seemed like maybe the only reason to move him to third was to protect Jeter's ego.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely possible that A-Rod would have had to move to third eventually at some point in his career. I mean, it's a little weird that Jeter finished his career as a shortstop. I mean, it's pretty rare for shortstops to play that position for 2 decades. But, A-Rod was only 29 or 28 when he came to the Yankees. Like the idea that he was probably at least 4 or 5 years from having to move there for like his own reasons. It seemed like doing it at that point seemed clear that was just about accommodating Jeter.
Yeah. But maybe a move like that to preserve the locker room would be worth it if it prevented discord in the clubhouse. But that didn't really work out. All of these free agent acquisitions had led to a lot of turnover in the clubhouse, and many of them, like Kevin Brown and Gary Sheffield, were known to be difficult to get along with. Alex, though, would become the most prominent of these new faces, these highly paid, big-name free agents who hadn't actually won anything in New York yet, who were not true Yankees.